John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, enters the conversation. He wrote about it at FanRank Sports NFL. And, of course, John, Romo eloquently last night. Now, I said, I hope that these were his terms. I hope that they didn't make him go out there and do this. I don't think they did. He sounded like these were him. This was his plan. I hope it didn't have anything to do with the organization. I hope he said, look, guys, I'm going to make this easy on everybody, and I'm going to go out there and passionately put this out, which is what I think he did. But what's next now for Tony Romo?
Well, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. He's going to be in a different city next season. It's just a matter of which one. I think Denver is excuse me, Denver is the perfect fit. If you think about it, because of the Trevor Siemian being a first-year starter, doesn't make a lot of money, seventh-round pick on his rookie contract. And you're right about Brock Osweiler. He's been awful. Let's be honest. At the same time, makes a heck of a lot of money. And they can get out of it in year 3, but that's a huge cap hit to take in year 2. And even more than the cap hit, we talk all the time about general managers refusing to admit mistakes. That's a big one. If you're Rick Smith in Houston, to say, I totally screwed this up.
Yeah, but that's an unfixable one.
All this money.
That's an unfixable one.
I agree with you. I'm just talking about the reality of the situation and where it is. And remember, then on top of it, you not only have to eat the money with Brock Osweiler, you got to pay Tony a heck of a lot of money. So I don't think that's tenable financially, whereas Denver, because Siemian and Paxton Lynch, even though he's presumably the long-term answer, they're both obviously under rookie deals. Paxton gets paid much more as a first-round pick, but it's still very financially viable. So I think just from a perspective of that's a heck of a good team, on top of it, that would be the best situation for Tony. And then there's loads of cities looking for quarterbacks, but they're not necessarily ready to win. But he's going to be a starting quarterback in this league. There's no question he deserves to be a starting quarterback in this league. But, hey, Dak Prescott is the answer in Dallas, and he's going to be.
John, 37 years old next year, $14 million, 19.5, 20.5. That's what some team's going to have to owe him unless he decides, hey, yeah, sure, I'll come there and renegotiate. Unless he really, really, really wants to play.
I think he's going to have to renegotiate. His cap numbers moving forward are just ridiculous. And I think even in Dallas, he probably would have renegotiated. That's been the sort of the mentality of contracts in this league. We all know they're year to year by and large. And there are ways you can move money around. Howie Roseman's been very good about it with this team in Philadelphia. And, yeah, he's going to have to renegotiate. But while I say that, still going to get paid a heck of a lot of money. Veteran quarterbacks in this league with his resume are going to make significant amounts of money. And look who the measuring sticks were in the offseason. They were Osweiler and Sam Bradford, and making $18 million per year. So I don't think Tony's dipping below $18 million. I'll say that.
No, you're probably right about that. How do you think it went? Yes, and do you think? I hope this was him. He because it was a pre-written statement. This was his word. This was his idea. Hopefully, right?
Yeah, well, it depends how you look at it. The writing was on the wall; it was obvious, and I think
right. But is he the bigger? Is he the bigger guy that finally said, "Look, you guys don't want to address it. He won't address it. They won't address it. I'll address it."
Yeah, that's what he had to do because he's in uniform now. I don't think you had to address it, but now that he's scheduled to be in uniform as the backup, I think this is the time you had to say, look, Dak Prescott is the starter of this team because let's face it, we talked about it on Tuesday's show, if Tony Romo's in uniform on the sidelines and you have a rookie quarterback playing a first half like Dak did against Philadelphia, there's going to be people looking at Tony Romo and say, throw him in the game. But then that's very short-sighted because you potentially lose a young quarterback who looks like he's going to be the answer to your team for not only this year but the 10 years after this year. You might lose him mentally. There's so many things that can go wrong. And I think the Cowboys as a whole, they paid a lot of deference to Tony Romo. They refused to come out, Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones, and say what we all knew, Dak Prescott was the starter, and they let Tony do it. So I think it had to be done, and I think the right guy did it, and that was Tony Romo, and he handled it very, very well.
Well, they're in a situation where, another team next year, what if, let's throw this scenario out there. What if nobody trades for him? Can the two of those guys coexist?
No. Well, first of all, you can't have a backup making that much money.
Exactly.
You can't.
Well, what if you're another team and you say, look, this guy's 37 years old. He's making a lot of money. I'm not giving up anything of value to go get that.
Yeah, I mean, with that salary, you can't. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are going to get much, if anything, in a trade unless he significantly renegotiates, agrees to do that. If not, they're going to have to release him and move on. And that's the more likely scenario. Because, as I said, I mean, you have a fourth-round pick, so the Cowboys have lucked out. Because what has happened is what happened in Seattle back in 2012 with Russell Wilson. Who was a third-round pick. You're paying the quarterback position nothing for basically 4 years, most likely 3 because you're going to have to renegotiate if he plays this well. But either way.
Right.
So when you do that, you can allocate those assets to different parts of your roster, and in theory, if you do the right thing, like Seattle was able to do, you can build this monster of a contender. And that's exactly what happened in Seattle. That could happen in Dallas if they make the right decisions. And now that Russell Wilson's getting paid, you see slowly but surely the roster is eroding in Seattle because now they got to pay the quarterback $20 million. Mm-hmm. And that's just the reality of the NFL. So the best case scenario for any team is to hit on a quarterback in the second, third, fourth round. It rarely happens, but if you do, you're set up for at least a 3 or 4 year window if you make the right decisions, and that's always a question with Jerry Jones.
John McMullen's with us. You're right. They're in that Seattle situation where they can build, and now you could be looking at a team that has the young quarterback not getting paid, and they can start spending money on talent around him for the next couple of years. That's a scary proposition if you're inside the NFC East. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen with us. We're going to look at some NFL stuff before we dive into Eagles and the Seahawks. And, this is a little Eagle-ish, but you wrote about this at 973ESPN.com. A lot of people don't remember, but Andy Reid wanted Russell Wilson in that draft 2012.
Yeah, had the 76th pick. Seattle took him at 75, and right before the Eagles were ready to pounce, and then the Eagles traded down, I think, 12 spots it was, and they got Nick Foles. And we all know how that went. But can you imagine if Russell Wilson was in Philadelphia, Andy Reid would probably still be here.
No Ginger Jesus. No Ginger Jesus.
No Ginger Jesus, no Carson Wentz. We wouldn't have had to go through the tortured experiment of Chip Kelly. I mean, this kid is off the charts. He's a superstar in this league. And his record since day one in Seattle has been unbelievable. 4 straight playoff appearances. They win a Super Bowl. They're a yard away from another Super Bowl. They're most likely going to be in a 5th straight postseason this year. It was one of those things. They call football a game of inches, baseball, sports in general. And we always think about those inches being on the field. In this case, it was one pick, and the Eagles were poised to take Russell Wilson. And that's not speculation. That's confirmed by both sides. Pete Carroll talked about it today at NovaCare on his conference call. Andy Reid called John Snyder, the GM of Seattle, and said we were going to take him. And they're good friends, and he started giving them the business, and that's what the Eagles were going to do.
You just stuck a knife right in my heart. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Big Russell Wilson fan. I think he's top 5. I think he has been for a while. I think the Eagles have their hands full with him. I want to look at some other quick NFL players that have made impacts this year. How about DeMarco Murray? We touched on him Tuesday a little bit, but what he has added to, because we were talking about this the other day. Mariota was a guy that many people thought would not be able to be successful unless he was kind of in a more gimmicky style of offense. You look at their wide receivers out there, and we complain here in Philly. I mean, they got Rashard Matthews, Tajay Sharp, Kendall Wright. These guys they got nobody out there. Seriously, nobody.
Football, so they're a little bit better than Philadelphia.
But DeMarco Murray, what he's added to that team and the quarterback, I think is we're downplaying that Murray might be in the MVP race. People don't realize it. He might be, he doesn't lead the league in rushing, but he might be having the best all-around year for a running back.
Yeah, and I think you have to give a lot of credit to Mike Mularkey, the coach down there, who people kind of snicker over because he's failed in other spots. But he went into that situation. He took a look around and said, okay, I have a young quarterback who's learning at the professional level. What do I do to help him? And the obvious answer is the running game. And he calls it exotic smash mouth football because obviously with Marcus, they can run a lot of a read option if they want. They can use the offset look if they want, but they also like to just go downhill, which DeMarco is very, very good at. And don't forget Derrick Henry. So they have sort of a 1-2 punch in the backfield, and they have 2 great tackles I mentioned on Tuesday. First-round picks, Jack Conklin, Taylor Lewan, not only first-round picks, but high first-round picks. So they're really good running the football, and that in turn has made Marcus Mariota look a lot better. And the most impressive part, because I've not been high on Mariota. I don't think he played well at all last season, and he's getting better. And one of the reasons I'm excited about him is he's getting better at traditional stuff. Now he can do play action, sit in the pocket, throw the football down the field. And you mentioned those receivers, they aren't great, but when you have 8-man boxes to try to stop the run, it's a lot easier to get open. So for the first time in a long time, things are going the right way in Nashville. And because Houston's probably going to come back to the pack a little bit, they might have an outside chance at challenging for that division.
Yeah, and, you look at that, you look at Dallas, you look at how Philly won this week, is the running game coming back? Is it cool again?
I would say no as a whole in the NFL, but I would say it should be, especially as you get later in the season, and we haven't seen it yet. It seems to get later, whether you're a global warming fan or not. It certainly seems to stay warmer later into the season. But once you get into some of these cold weather games, hey, I'd like to have a running game. And certainly with all these teams, we saw it with Carson Wentz last week with the Eagles. I mean, Eagles finally get a running game. He looks a lot better. It's obvious to me, but it's sort of like a siren song. It's so easy to pass the ball at times in this league. Coaches fall in love with it.
Just ask Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, it's just easier to throw the ball. It's easier to move, but it's not necessarily the best thing because the running game, while at times it can look ugly in 3 and 4 yards, but you see what time of possession can do in a particular game.
And you
what did the Eagles do against the Falcons?
Yeah, and you see what Oakland did against Denver, what Dallas has done, what Tennessee's doing, how Miami's won 4 in a row. I mean, Jay Ajayi all of a sudden is 6th in the league in rushing. He's only played like 2 games.
Yeah, and I think a lot of coaches sort of hear the whispers and there's criticisms if you're not scoring a lot of points, if you're not getting a lot of yards. And as I said, it becomes just easier to throw the football, whereas sort of those hidden attributes to running the football don't always show up, or at least show up that clearly, whereas, hey, you can keep the number one offense off the field for the majority of the game. Yeah. That, to me, is a prudent way to go about things. And, hey, we talk about it all the time. Ezekiel Elliott, the Dallas Cowboys, and I was one of them. I'm not going to run away from it. Dallas Cowboys got a lot of criticism for taking Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. Not because people didn't think he was a good player, because that pick at such a premium is in theory not worthy for a running back. Yeah. In other words, a running back shouldn't be picked that high. Well, he's proven that to be a fallacy. And
well, because they're using them.
Figure that out.
But they're using them.
Yeah.
If you don't use them, it's a fallacy. If you're going to hand the ball to the guy, then it's great. If you're going to say, we're going to draft a guy and then split time, run the ball 17 times a game, then no, that's a fallacy. But they're doing it the right way. They're running, they're giving it to him, they're depending on him, and you take a guy that high. When you don't, that's certainly not the right way to go. John McMullen's with us here, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. A lot of things going on. By the way, Monday night, a little known, I guess not people that don't pay attention all the time, games in Mexico, John. In fact, Monday night on 97.3 ESPN, they're going to have a Mexican crew calling the game on the radio. So you got the London games and now Mexico City. Who's got a better shot at getting a team, London or Mexico City?
Well, it should be Mexico City because obviously the travel would be much easier. And I just think a London-based team is just a nightmare logistically. But obviously London has the big head start. London is the better market as far as economics go, and that's big. That's really big. And that's what the NFL is more concerned with. So from a logical standpoint, it should be Mexico City. But from the NFL standpoint, it's obviously London, and it's all about money. It's always about money with the NFL. And you can make more money in the UK than you can make in Mexico.
All right, that's Raiders, by the way, down there in Mexico City. They play on Monday night, and you'll hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. A couple Eagles news and notes. Barber back at practice today, John. He's going to play on Sunday. Is that the feeling we get?
Yeah, he was back, and he was taking his reps, first-team left guard, so there's no question he's the starter. Doug emphatically stated that because the question was asked. And it's not a surprise. I mean, he had played very, very well. And I know because the Eagles are coming off such a great performance, maybe the best performance of the year from the offensive line as a whole, which is strange to say because you were down 2 starters, not only Allen but also Lane Johnson. But certainly from a running standpoint, it was their best performance of the year. But you got to take a step back from those things and understand part of it was the opponent, part of it was how they play defense. Part of it was flow of the game. The Eagles didn't fall behind. And if you look at the film, there's no question Allen's their best left guard, and that's basically what Doug said today.
And by the way, I know you like to look at the Pro Football Focus. Did you see they ranked the 32 offensive lines? Number 1, Dallas. Number 2, Philadelphia, second best offensive line in the league. The only team to allow fewer quarterback pressures as a unit than the Cowboys. The Eagles have only allowed 70 pressures. It's best in the league.
Yeah, I've been screaming from the tallest building in Philadelphia. I don't understand this narrative that this offensive line is bad, and it's coming from Philadelphia people who obviously don't watch other teams. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. And some good teams. Seattle, you're going to see an awful offensive line this weekend. Denver is pathetic on the offensive line. Minnesota, you saw that a couple weeks ago. Just terrible on the offensive line. And the Eagles have been hey, well above average, as I said. I don't think they're the second best offensive line in football. I think that's a little bloated. They certainly haven't been the same since Lane suspension. But overall, and when you have those five guys out there, Lane Johnson, Brooks, who has played great and has been a tremendous free agent signing, Kelsey, who's starting to play a little bit better, Barber and Jason Peters, that's a top 5 to 10 offensive line in the NFL.
Last thing for you, John. Peterson today, he acknowledged that the NFL said, hey, by the way, Neal should have been flagged for that hit.
I think we all knew that. I mean, hey, you know me with the officials, I constantly say it. And that was ironically, that was a perfect example because it was a blown call. There's no question about it. The officials got it wrong. It could have cost you the game, but it didn't cost you the game because you persevered and you overcame it.
Yes.
And that's what you have to do. It's a bang-bang play, and they missed it. And it's very difficult to get those plays, and maybe you could talk about something like that should be reviewable, but it's not at this point, and it's very difficult to call. They got it wrong. The NFL admitted that. We all knew it anyway. But that doesn't mean you just turtle up.
Their explanation,
okay, we're gonna lose the game.
Their explanation was ridiculous, though. The fact that they deemed that the majority of the contact was to the chest area with the side of the helmet, and therefore the contact between that defender's helmet and Matthews was incidental. And these are some of the things I say all the time, is sometimes there are helmet-to-helmet hits, but they're incidental helmet-to-helmet. Like, you're not aiming for that area. You're not targeting. It's just that's where inertia brings you. That's where your body and gravity we're going when a guy makes a move.
And, hey, back in the day, we can go back 20 years, that wasn't a penalty.
No.
So, I mean, in today's environment, it was a penalty. There's no question about it. It should have been a flag. The Eagles got a bad break there, but they didn't let it stop them. And as
you're right. They moved on.
You're going to get bad breaks occasionally in this league. You're going to get blown calls. And you can either turtle up, as I said, or you don't. And you persevere and win the football game. And that's exactly what they did. And now that's why people haven't talked about it much. But if they would have lost the game, and that would have been a key part of it, we would have been talking about it ad nauseum. I just think it's one of those things. And Doug isn't the only coach. I say it all the time. Coaches say to players all the time, control what you can control. You can't control officials. And, hey, one of the problems with the Eagles on the road, and you're going to see the toughest road environment in the NFL this weekend, is their inability to handle some of those things when it starts to go off the rail in a hostile environment. That's something the Eagles have to improve on.
All right, John's back tomorrow with more from NovaCare. The two coordinators will speak tomorrow. We'll get the latest on that. More NFL news and notes every day, 4:05. John McMullen on the Sports Bash. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, Mike.